how long has it been since you've seen this logo? I'm talking about warning. If you can read this, you are provoking an attack of opportunity. I'm a nerd. I'm a geek. I'm absurd. I'm unique. Okay, so maybe you're not watching the video on our YouTube channel, the Rollmongers Podcast Network. You're probably listening to this on Spotify or one of the many places you can find all of our podcasts. Hello, I am GM Jeff Ball, your host, and tonight we have decided, mostly because a game got canceled, I'm down to very few people, to get back into doing a little bit of Attack of Opportunity. I recently listened to Nathan Fillion and Alan Tudyk do their first episode of a show podcast called We Were Spacemen. And the banter, the back and forth, of course, reminded me of the wonderful chemistry that guests had on this show. How even though I was told I became more of a discussion, because I always had an anecdote, I always had a follow-up story, I always had a jibe, and I use the mic as much, if not more, than my guests. The back and forth I had always enjoyed. My guests had always enjoyed. And this show had been canceled due to time and scheduling restraints. And so now, running an entirely different cast on Monday, I would like at least to dip in to the cast pool and finish interviewing the entire Rollmongers cast that have been missing from this show for the past 4 years. We've been playing Abomination Vaults for 3. We've been playing Outlaws of Alkenstar, both Pathfinder 2nd Edition adventures, for about 2.5 years. And I have grown another cast of like 5, 6, 8 people from those shows. And I think it's time you met them. So, starting with our most recent edition, it's no secret that I have reached out to fans, friends of cast members, family members of cast members, other content creators to cameo or possibly audition and eventually become part of the Rollmongers Network. And, you know, in slim times, you might find yourself, I don't know, sitting in a barber's chair in a new town that you've moved to, and somebody says, you know, how are you? What you doing? And get talking about your hobbies. And they say, why, I'm a game master myself. I'm familiar with Pathfinder. And I say, oh, yes. Now, I've had these conversations many times. And I, of course, pull out my little card that has the Seeker art on it, where we have the commissioned art of the Age of Ashes podcast, the Elven Portal podcast with all the dwarves on it, the portals and the dragon. And, of course, our biggest show, our Star Wars Saga Edition, Dawn of Defiant show. See how this works, Jack? See how I just shamelessly pitch and produce the network when I'm supposed to be asking you questions?
Networking
Please
is
welcome.
networking.
Networking is networking. Please welcome to the show, without further ado, Mr. Jack Wilson from the barbershop Jack the Clipper, our newest player in both Abomination Vaults, Monster Interrupted, who plays our mercenary cleric, a halfling who hasn't even decided if he's going to stay, and of course, an instant fan favorite in our Outlaws of Alkenstar show, the All Guns, No Glory podcast, Pip from Stabco, Jack Wilson.
Well, thanks, Jeff. It's great to be here. I'm sorry that I was the only one that decided to show up and, have a fun night with you tonight. Well, as you said, I'd love to be here, and you just said hi to me when I was in the barbershop, and it's like, hey, Jack, we talk about nerdy stuff all the time, and you dragged me in, and now somehow I play Pathfinder with you guys every Monday, and can't say I've been ever disappointed. It's been a great time, other than when the guys decide to abandon us on a night like this.
Well, again, thank you so much for being here tonight. So, the first question that we always like to ask our nerdy one of us is, when did you first realize that you were of the geeky persuasion, a nerd one of us? One of us, was there a book, a movie, a video game, a family member, a friend that introduced you to the whole world of nerdom? Comic book, perhaps?
No, nothing as interesting as that. The only fun thing that really brought me towards the world of nerdom is starting to play video games as a kid, and then having my friend's father drag me into the world of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, good old second edition with Thaco and everything. And He just thought it was a good way to teach us math and simple math, and what we were grade 7, so we were no more than, I think, 12 years old at that point, and just trying to go through those charts and everything made me slowly resent the game, but always brought me back in with having a world to build and a story to play.
Awesome. Well, that's all I got. Did not find the original list of questions.
You
So
couldn't
from
find
here, no, so from here we're gonna wing it. Um, Now I always make it sound so easy, so free, so cavalier, where I could just like, you're a nerd, in you go. Like there is a process. We are fussy about who we invite to play with us. I mean, for one thing, you got to have working equipment that unfortunately I cannot afford to provide. So now we found a good mid grain, the best for least amount of money, and we found that the Audio Technica 2100 microphone that is USB and XLR phantom power operable microphone, as well as its knockoff, the Samsung QU2, also affordable. And this is like affordable as in just over $100 Canadian. You know, I would never recommend. I don't want to trash any brand, but just I don't like the big Yeti USB. So every USB mic that made the big debut compared to a phantom power microphone, it's like talking with your hand in front of your face. It always comes out a bit muddy, or phantom power. Oh, he's holding up his Yeti. Yeah, made you buy something else, didn't I?
Yes, yes, you did.
Go
Nothing
ahead,
like
plug it in. I
go
dare you. You'll see the difference, ladies and gentlemen. Like how good he
I've
sounds now.
I've ripped
Compared
all
to
of
what
those
can I?
cords out, and it's all gonna be
Yeah. Okay.
tossed on Facebook Marketplace.
Oh, okay. Um, Now a cheap but reliable phantom power for a microphone is made by Pyle, Pyle, and our go-to that the entire cast uses is the Pad 20 MXU, PAD 20 MXU. And this goes from 40 to $70, sometimes 90, depending on how many you buy. I noticed Amazon and stuff, like when you start buying the same thing, price just goes up. They're just like, oh, he needs more of these. They don't get cheaper, they go up. Sign in a different account. Hey, why is this $20 cheaper? Buggers. Um, so there's that. To become a role monger, it's like you're gonna have to dish out almost $200. You sure you want to do this, right? Then there's the fact: have these people listened to the show? Do they get us? Do they like our sense of humor and all the quasi, sometimes very misogynistic, some huge innuendos, that might offend some communities, all in good fun, all harmless, the whole, we have Gen X, we have millennial, we have some Gen Z, even the odd boomer, um, to put labels all around. So I wanted to take the opportunity without a question script to ask you, since you're fresh, because a lot of the cast members that I had interviewed, they played with us a little bit and it was time for your interview. You've been playing with us for how long? Do you remember?
We're at about 4 months, I believe.
And so
Just just under 4 months, yeah.
yeah. And you checked out the show when I was still in the barber chair because you were DMing
Yes.
Age of Ashes, right? And
Yes, that's exactly.
be honest, what was your first? No, it sounds too much like a plug. Tell us about our show. How about this? Um, when you watched what we did as YouTube content, or did you listen to the podcast first? How about that?
It was very much more YouTube content. I like having a video that I can see you guys riffed off of and everything. A lot of you guys are very emotive, which is kind of the reason I liked going towards you guys, where I've seen a lot of other podcasts on YouTube where everyone's kind of straight faced and no one really moves and they kind of just, whenever they're on camera, they're the ones just leaning forward and talking. But I love seeing that you guys love to make these little jokes. You love to poke fun back and forth with each other, and you actually move with the camera and you move with your scene. Starting with, yeah, Ash of Ages, you guys were amazingly at the start just starting with jokes. You didn't even really go into explaining the scene, but more into just having fun with each other.
I remember that was our very first live stream, and I didn't record it. I just went live, forgetting that OBS had to do both, and I had to download a crappy like 480 or 720 video and post it. So I have, I think it's our biggest video ever, even at the mere 16,000 hits. It's our biggest video ever that we've produced, and I get a lot of comments going, "Video sucks." You know, I was like, "Oh, come on." So first, we had just gotten Fantasy Grounds as a sponsor, and by a sponsor, I mean Dark Galaxies Gaming. A guy I'd interviewed had gotten me in touch with the people at Fantasy Grounds, and they had just like unlocked a bunch of books that would normally cost us hundreds of dollars, including the first three adventures for Age of Ashes. So, like through Dark Galaxies Gaming and our technically a sponsorship, with Fantasy Grounds. Um, Here we are, and live, and didn't really know what we were doing. Uh, my idea was that Pathfinder Second Edition that August was a week old. There would be no one else to compete with. And there's something to be said with actually being ready for me right now. It's like, here's the rule book, Joe Gibson. I'm going to read the adventure. We'll meet in the middle. You can hang out in the wings or you could be a character and we'll just go, go, go. And then it's a live stream, which is a very different animal than just comfortably recording around a table or what we do. We use a Zoom call. Um, Not a lot of people know that I actually run my own tech and the show. They think I'm nuts. And that we are dialed in through a Zoom call to record. It's because I've been fussy enough on audio quality where you guys need to get right up on the microphone so it doesn't you wouldn't sound the echoey bathroom that most interviews on Zoom would, come from, that kind of thing. And we launched, 2019, I think it was when Pathfinder came out, 2021, something like that. So for someone like you, just like look at that evolution of like, wow, they're really amateuric, but stay with us because you like the chemistry and probably had nothing better to do on a Monday night because that was the offer. You free on Mondays? I got this little cast. Um, so good to know. My next question for you. So I want to try to explore your journey in the last 4 months. Because one of the reasons I started Attack of Opportunity is because I don't go to conventions, do not have time. Um, just don't have time for that kind of thing. Even though there's um, the guys from Find the Path literally got artwork pamphlets, and they went to a couple conventions and handed them out and talked to the people, and it really helped put them on the map. And they did Mummy's Mask, which has always been a passion project of mine. I actually reached out to their GM and said, "Hey, haha, fun rivalry." And he said, "No, no, no, no. A rising tide lifts all ships. Like we're in this together." And it really heartened me to drop an easy attitude in the beginning where you interview somebody and their podcast takes off. And it's cool that I was a part of that where I helped their fans connect with that person. Well, we've always stated mediocre small potatoville. It staves off that whole you look at someone's success and go, good for you. Good for you. The kind of thing. There's the whole dress for the job you want as opposed to job you have. So I've always tried to act more professional, big video, more podcasts, stretch out a big network, look bigger than we really are. Um, so I was curious when you got into this with us, and I'm like, $200, fellow Canadian, um, sit with us. If you haven't actually watched the show, and you did, you came in and sat in a game with Fantasy Grounds up and running. You could see everything. You could see the behind the curtain because I've lost so many players that I've auditioned that they're like, it's so different than you sitting around the table. Oh, we make it look easy and there's chemistry and there's fun. It's like, yeah, but there is that sort of game face. There is that sort of, have you had a conversation where you're in a grocery line and you
Yeah, yeah.
strike up a conversation with a stranger, but the whole line's listening to you. So you try to be witty and friendly and charming because six people are listening in, even though you're just talking about the weather. That sort of being on or being on the mic, that's a good way to describe the difference between, it's literally like you're at the grocery store. Sit down with your buddies in aisle 6 amongst the pasta and play D&D, and people walk by and they're watching you and listening to you and not sure what you're doing. That's exactly, but you're like, haha, but I want every shopper here at Value Mart to like this game and like us. So hi, you're kind of half acknowledging them and just doing your thing and trying not to get kicked off the internet or kicked out of the Value Mart. That's what it's like for us. What I'd like to know is what it was like for you when you're first starting out, when we first got you to watch the show, then got you to be, go out and buy equipment for a podcast. So let's just forget the shameless plug and forget that we're talking obviously about our podcast. I don't know. Have you ever been part of another production or
No,
podcast, anything
no,
like that?
not at all. I've
Okay.
never been part of another podcast, but yeah, for the first, I watched you guys for a month where I was just in the background, and you guys hinted and made a few jokes at it that I was creepily kind of watching you guys, and just was a whole month of like every single Monday I was there watching you guys play, and I could immediately tell that I don't know if it was just because you guys have all been friends or if they were much more into the community and talk to each other, but everyone was very friendly with each other. It didn't matter which night we were on, if we were doing Alkenstar or Outlaws or any of the other games. You guys were always, you could tell that the team was always a team. And I immediately saw that and went, I would love to ruin that. And the first session you had me in, I immediately antagonized another player and tried to make fun in a lighthearted way without trying to ruin his time. And I just wanted to see what kind of dynamic I could shove in there with then trying to be a salesman to everybody as I showed up, as it felt more like having an actual stranger join your party. And not only did they slowly get to know Pip or Elric, depending on which campaign we were talking about here, but they also got to know me because I had only ever creepily watched in the back and maybe asked a few questions here or there. But it was great to just kind of jump in and go like, "Hey, you guys know nothing about me, but I'd love to just stir the pot and see what happens as I jump in and out of this conversation."
That explains a lot. When you played Elric, the mercenary cleric, and you called out Troy's guy about how he was doing his job and what you could, you didn't show off. You just did a bunch of stuff, and Troy picked up. But now Troy Phillips um, is closer to my age. He's been gaming forever. He owned a little gaming comic book store in Lakefield, north of Peterborough, here in Ontario, Canada, and he gets it. You know what I mean? He's been around nerdy people quite a bit. Um, but that's the funny thing. You say like you guys are all friends. The Monday cast are two acquaintances that became gaming buddies and closer friends over the years. And then there's two coworkers from FedEx that I worked for about 4 years and no longer with FedEx, and found out they were nerds and just got along with them really well at work, right? So they're coworkers that are kind of chummy, but again, you don't know how these people. You never been to their house for dinner. You don't know these people' personal habits, girlfriends, none of that, right? Just what it's like to hang out with you in a public social setting. Um, a couple of fans. Two of them are actual fans that either reached out to me or I saw them commenting and lurking and asking questions in our Discord, and I reached out to them, got talking, and then I get to a point where I'd like to meet a fan once in a while and just say, would you take a phone call? And they freak out, of course. It's like, no, 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 you have all these questions, and I'm just better on the phone than texting. My texting is terrible. So they're like, okay. And do you have any questions? And they would talk to me and stuff. And then, listen to their voice. And it's like, you've got to really, would you like to audition? Because the reason I'm making this phone call, honestly, was because we're short a guy and this type of thing. Um, and then we game, hopefully every Monday night, as tonight doesn't always happen, for about a year or two, maybe into three, I think, before we found you. So you have people that only know each other casually for 90 minutes, 2 hours, anywhere from 90 minutes to 3 hours once a week. But because everyone's gaming, because everyone's there to play a game, that's what connects you. You don't have to care if these guys are of the same religion, political sway, sexual preference, how your mom raised you, how they are racially or socially prejudiced, if hopefully not, that kind of thing. Um, what kind of dad jokes they like, that kind of thing. It all kind of creeps into the way they play, and you get a sense of person, and we start gravitating to each other. When I met you, I was moved from Lindsay to Peterborough, needed a barber, and I can't remember if someone recommended you to me or I just found the sign, Jack the Clipper, and I'm like, and it had the top hat, like Victorian London, England top hat, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so funny. Like got to meet these people, whoever this, I don't care. Like, it's just so dark and funny, you know. And I roll up on this guy's place. I make an appointment, and it's his house. And it's this little house on a little street. It's not some big chain. I'm like, okay, cool. Roll in there, and I'm not shy because every job I've had to interact with people, and I've always had to give them something or sell something. Not a salesman, but where's the product, or they could, interact with people and be personable, right? So roll in there. There's you and your brother, and you guys were really, really nice. And the fact that you guys had that sense of humor sealed your fate, because as soon as I found out you guys were kind of nerdy and played Pathfinder, that was it. Like, at the very least, I had to make you a listener. And at the best case scenario, here we are a couple years later. Now, that being said, I don't force the podcast idea on everyone I meet, even if they're nerds. I just fish around a little bit, and again, so it never becomes weird. I always tell them, like, give this to the geekiest person in your family, hand them my card. Um, we're a very acquired taste. We're a niche of a niche of a niche audience. And, I will not be offended if you don't watch it or listen to it. Next time I see you, I'm not going to be like, so did you watch the show? Did you listen to the show? That kind of thing. Um, so my next question for your podcasting journey is, um, the equipment. You go out, you bought your equipment, you're setting it up. Did you enjoy the technical aspect of going from something so simple to something that might have been a little bit more technical? Are you computer savvy enough to muck around and enjoy the technical aspects?
I am definitely YouTube savvy. Same way that I've done everything being a young person buying their first home and everything. I know absolutely nothing, but I know how to Google and I know how to YouTube. And you literally just type in the exact products you have, ask how to set it up, what's going on, what's wrong with it. And then if all else fails, yeah, I had 5 other people that I could then message on Discord, one being yourself, Jeff, going, how the heck do I set up an audio deck or any of this stuff? Because YouTube's useless. It has, giant ones that are worth $700 or something like that, and 20 different other dials that I don't have. And then the lovely world of chord management, trying to figure out how the heck I'm gonna place everything on my desk as you warned me. I'm going to have you change this and change that. Don't have it hiding under your PC so you can go turn a dial at a moment's notice, as we had before, where I'm always a little bit muddy since my room's a little bit smaller than the rest of your guys. It's not a problem though. Everything is easy to slowly set up. The group is always welcoming to me. I've never felt like I need to go out of my way to sheepishly ask questions. So it's lots of fun to just slowly set it up. I've already had a giant gaming PC since I was like 18 years old. There's never been a scary moment where it's just like, I'm going to break something. These pins are going to snap if I try and shove it in too hard. No, it's all funny technical stuff where I've plugged in the wrong audio cord into some random thing. I've turned on the camera and I've realized that it's facing a completely different way than I imagined, and now half my chest is showing and then only my top, of my head slightly cut off. I can always see something around the desk that always could be improved with this little equipment stuff we can have, but it is always manageable and easy enough that you never feel overwhelmed with any of the things that you've tried to either, push my way or have felt advantageous enough to try and improve myself.
Cool. Pro tip: if you're in a Zoom call, delete your own video, because it's so easy to stare at yourself talking and you don't realize it. I wouldn't say it makes you stutter, but it makes you talk a little bit, just ever so slightly, like, awkwardly. It's a bad trick. Now, I unfortunately have to see everyone, including myself, because I run tech, but it's one thing I tell my guys, like, do not have your own image in your own Zoom call, because that is what you'll stare at. You won't look at the other guys talking. You'll miss visual cues. You'll just watch yourself talk and constantly adjust your posture and that kind of thing. And you start leaning to the left, away from just natural conversation and that kind of thing. It is possible to do that. It is possible to um, watch yourself talk. People do in the mirror all the time. But pro tip, if you're doing this online, is just, I just find It's subtle, but it's there. If you have especially new people at this, tell them to shut down their own video call that they can't see, and that's if they check the room. You don't want to be sitting there in your suit pajamas and have the cat walking by and naked roommates and kids running and like, you got to set yourself up, and your cast will say, hey, get a little something on your chin there, or that kind of thing, right? You got to, is your camera too high, is your camera too low? But other than that, shut it down. You mentioned a gaming PC,
Yes,
right?
yes, I have.
Okay. So instead of bragging rights like, oh, I'm rocking this card or whatever, what's your go-to game genre? Like what types of games do you like to play?
I've mostly grown up playing roguelites where you're here to die. You're here to get better. I slowly moved towards RPGs as I became more reading comprehensive since I've been playing on a PS1 since I was about 6 years old and would just somehow thumb through, dialogue, hoping that I would see uh, maybe a quest marker and to lead me in the next direction of a quest. Uh, so roguelites were always something where it encouraged you to make mistakes. It encouraged you to fail and keep going forward. And it showed your progression as you got better. As I got older, slowly moving towards things like Fallout, Mass Effect, things where you had more moral choices, letting me, instead of questioning the open world and having adults tell me that I shouldn't be questioning these things or these are questions that have already been answered. You're in this fantasy world where you get to decide whether or not you want to be immoral or amoral, and the game does kind of tell you, oh, this is an evil decision, but you also get to decide, well, maybe this is for the greater good, and it usually does give you a little bit of feedback of saying like you're getting some gains this way. You show that it can be solved. A problem doesn't always have to be this right and wrong thing, but it can be this little gray line where you hop back and forth on it.
Okay, that's cool. Um, I don't think anybody that is a role monger is not a gamer. I don't like it just kind of goes hand in hand. Well, if we're doing this through your computer and through video and YouTube or whatever, like you said, they're automatically savvy. They either watch a bunch of games and stuff where they play, even if it's something light. Um, Again, touching on a really good episode. I really do recommend if you're any kind of Firefly or fantasy or Nathan Fillion and Tudoc fan that you listen to We Were Spacemen. Um, Tudoc talks about when he first met Nathan Fillion and how Fillion says, okay, you're off work early today. I want you to go to a Best Buy and pick up an Xbox and Halo. And Tudoc didn't know what Xbox was, what Halo was, and play it, and then we'll have something to talk about. And a couple days later, he sees him again, says, what do you think? And Tudoc's like, what? Oh, you were serious? He's like, Alan, I want you to go down to Best Buy. You're making good money. Get an Xbox, play Halo. So he played it. And then after Tudoc got good and they talked about it, he invited him to LAN parties where him and his nerdy acting buddies would play freaking Halo. And I just love that. We have someone so huge, does something so nerdy. They talk about Henry Cavill playing Warhammer. That's why he's going to be in like the Warhammer movie and stuff, right? Um, Big faces and stuff. This secret pleasure now that nerdom has come into the mainstream, like this little gem, is much more common now than back in the day. So I'm curious, back when you were playing second edition THACO and learning math or whatever, was this a dark secret? Was this back in the early to late 90s where before Harry Potter movies came out, or even something as flashy as Disney's Aladdin or whatever, with Robin Williams making fantasy fun again? Like was this a hidden pleasure with a secret? Was just quietly going, hey man, you lower your voice and talk about D&D, or was this something more open where you were doing it at school or doing it with parents or like friends and family going, oh, that's Jack's thing, take it or leave it, but they knew you were doing it? Was it hidden from the
Uh,
public eye?
No, it was never hidden. It really shows the big age gap between me and the rest of the guys, where you're just like, well, growing up in the late 90s, and no, 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 I was born 99. I didn't play D&D until 2000, what is that, 2010 or something like that, because I was 11 years old at that point. So
Okay.
there was, yeah, I'm much younger than any of the guys, despite the gray and everything like that. Uh,
Well, okay, I do have some cast members they're in their mid-20s, and they've grown into their 30s, but I still have more cast members that are still in their mid-20s. Like I said, I got some Gen Z, I've got some millennials. Um, it's one thing I actually enjoy. Okay, so, Matt and I are a little older, and, guys, Frank Hamilton, Corey Chazon are older, Troy, younger guys your age, Matt Spiegler, Eric, even Drew, guys that are in their mid to late 20s. Um, because you're talking about fantasy or because you're making a stereotypical joke, a Lord of the Rings joke or whatever, you guys get it. Like, I've never found a genre or a game where you could sit people down, like, unless the game was very basic, like Pop-O-Matic Trouble or Monopoly, right? Where you could sit down all kinds of age groups that are playing all kinds of characters, and just because you're 20 years younger than me, you have to play young so and so, the prince that's 20, and I'm the old mentor. No, you can play anything you want, and the relative up to date pop culture that and bring versus some of the dated jokes and dad jokes that we bring all contribute to the show and all cross over with each other. Not just because we love D20 games, but that the whole fantasy, the whole RPG thing, the whole um, acting and voice acting, and like you said, you use the word scene. Not a lot of people use that word. So did you take any drama in high school or grade school? Have you ever done any plays, anything like that? Have you ever been that kind of creative person that did
no,
anything like
no.
that? No.
I was I was much worse. I got into the class politics and, class president stuff where I liked debating and being correct. So that's where
Mm.
I have confidence and everything like that. I wasn't dramatic and, doing Shakespeare plays for the school. No, I loved being I'm gonna argue with you until I'm either right or you're wrong. There is no middle ground. That is how I
Oh,
won the argument.
debate club. That's a great, launch as far as I'm concerned for this kind of thing, because I don't know if you've noticed, but trying to run like two or three, four different rule sets and an old man's memory isn't easy. And I got a lot of rules lawyers in fans and cast members, and I actually like let them free. Instead of trying to hand wave stuff and argue with the DM and then somebody pulls out a rule to prove me wrong, we leaned hard into the rules lawyer aspect. I mean, like, they're an audience that they're a fan base that no one seems to appreciate or touch on. I'd always enjoyed playing raw, strictly by the rules, but making it work. Like, I get the whole thing where there's guidelines and you don't have to dig into the numbers, but my favorite story is um we played Mummy's Mask and they stepped left away from the script and they went to this brothel and all this stuff happened and it ended up a duel on the street, but no one had weapons or bothered to get them back from the coat check, and they had these satin pillows. And we're like, how are we going to do this? And like, let's look up the rules. Oh, it's an improvised weapon, -4 to hit. And do you have, and blah blah blah, right? But it's only a touch attack. You don't have to kind of like hit the guy as opposed to pierce his armor. So there's bonuses, and it made that idea of like, well, the numbers could be fun, as opposed to you wing him with a pillow, right? Slowing the roll and digging into some of those numbers because you don't always get to use those rules because of that specific situation made us appreciate the fact that the rules were there. Um, it again acquired taste to listen to us where we might stop and run off and talk about the rules. So another angle is we always try to update our rules. We recently ran shows, a bunch of them from Pathfinder Second Edition. When the new rules Pathfinder Revised came out after the whole Orc license debacle with Wizards of the Coast, we've tried to switch everything over, at least for the players, so that we are relearning, the audience is relearning, the audience have a source to, oh, what is the new rules about? Is it better than the second, first, whatever edition that I know? Um, and the audience seems a little bit more forgiving that if we slow our roll and suddenly dig into a rule, what is the new thing on Nethys? They're learning, we're learning, and we don't harp on it too much. And again, I'm still the GM, man. I still make the ruling in the end. And as much as they all passively aggressively go, well, if it were me, yeah, that's nice. You're not. Thank you for telling me the rule. And I agree with you guys. And I would let them state their case back and forth a couple quick times. Otherwise, okay, now the game's stalling, guys. I'm gonna go with this. You know, prove me wrong. We would get to the end of a round, and if someone, the guys that's not their turn, would still be looking up and digging into this rule, then they would come whistling in at the end, going, "Oh, I found it. It's this, this, and this." And we'd be like, "Cool, that's the rule. Then we'll go with this." And I would slightly alter the scene, or we would find something that we were doing for years. Some of the characters didn't read their own feats, so I don't dig into somebody else's character sheet, and I just trust them to play. And if somebody had a jetpack for 7 odd years and forgot to do piloting rolls every time he touched down, look to tease him about it. But damn well, moving forward, I'm going to ask for those rolls. We discover something, so we're lighthearted about all that. So there you are, stalking us from the shadows. People are wondering why I brought in my barber. Um, the guys have warmed up to you very quickly. Like I said, one of the criteria for playing with us is having an open mind and being pretty friendly and just liking to play with other people. But we do get a sense of each other and the newbies pretty quick, going, "I think you'll get it. I think you'll get along," that kind of thing. So there you are. We invite you to play, and bam, the webcam's on you. And I tell you, we are streaming live to the Tabletop RPG channel on Twitch and YouTube. And I had like 6, 7 platforms set up through, like, you are live across the continent. Um, what was that like?
Oh, that was easy. No, that is attention. That is attention-seeking Jack. I was ecstatic. Of course, I didn't want to make a fool of myself, so there was much less ad-libbing and much less freeform when I first started playing with you guys. I hadn't made like I had a Google Doc on the right side of my screen always, making sure that I had little quips or things I looked up beforehand to make sure I could maybe interject them if they were a place that would sound witty and things like that. I had an entire speech about the warranty of the PX93 injector in case someone wanted to ask too many questions about it. I definitely didn't feel any pressure coming in. Did I worry that my mic was immediately going to fall off or like any of the, I was going to touch a dial and screw up your audio? Oh, yeah. But that was sweating before I got the camera in front of my face. I was much more nervous until the point you introduced my character, and then it was just every other D&D session. I've played with guys where we're in 4 different time zones and we're trying to run a Pathfinder session, and someone's internet crashes out and you just kind of have to roll with it where, say, it's a wild magic surge or things like that. But you just kind of have a feeling that it's okay if something doesn't perfectly go wrong in the scene, as long as it's your character and things like that. As long as nothing actual technical goes wrong, like if my camera fell right now, I'd have a panic attack while we try to make sure you don't give me an opportunity attack.
That's awesome. Well, I think that's all the time I can spare for this evening. We've gotten to know Jack Wilson a little better. We've gotten to realize that I still can't help going on every little tangent, plugging the show and talking about personal anecdotes. And we've learned that there might be a few more episodes and a few more cast members to get to know, especially if I dig up the original script. Wanted to touch on one last thing. What Jack said about having all that stuff prepared, that's not scripting. That is just having a resource where you could dig into it and then spin it on the fly. Because your bit where you were talking about the different glowing buttons on this device they found when you were the pre-recorded voice coming out of the device was gold. And even if you had ran with an idea and made a couple notes, I still don't think that's scripting. It's no different than a player writing some notes about his character, some backstory, or the endless prep that the GM has to do. And we will see you all next time. Say goodnight, Jack.
Good night, everyone. Pleasure to be here.